Well, good evening, everyone, and I'd like to welcome you to the My Horse University and E-Extension's Horse Quest live webcast, Spring Cleaning, Getting Your Horse Ready for the Show Season. Our presenter this evening is Dr. Fernanda Camargo. Fernanda is an associate professor and the Horse Extension Professor for the University of Kentucky. After receiving her veterinary medicine degree from the State University of Londrina, Brazil, Dr. Camargo followed her passion for horses to Lexington in 2001. She completed a Ph.D. in equine pharmacology and toxicology at the University of Kentucky and soon thereafter became their Equine Extension Professor. Dr. Camargo's major focus is equine health and diseases, equine extension, and the 4-H horse program. She develops and delivers educational materials and activities for the county extension agents, horse owners, volunteer leaders, parents, and 4-H youth. I'd like to make a note that you will be able to ask questions to the presenter during the webcast via the chat on the lower left-hand side of the screen. And there also will be some time at the end of the webcast as well for you to ask some additional questions. And this webcast is being recorded and we will upload it to our website as well. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Dr.
Okay, thanks, Gwen. And good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you tonight. When the evening, at least here in Lexington, Kentucky, the evening is beautiful and it's just an honor to be here talking to you all. I actually hurt my ankle 5 weeks ago, and that's why I'm here tonight willingly instead of being out and wanting to ride my horse right now. So that's, a plus, I guess, for me. Let me see if I can hold the slides. Here we go. An overview of what we are going to be talking about today. We're going to start with how to assess the body condition scoring of the horse. We're going to go through vaccination protocols, a little bit of deworming protocols, very little about hoof care, and then conditioning of the athlete horse. So the Hennicky system is what we use for body condition scoring, and it is a system that actually measures the body fat in different areas. Can everybody see my pointer, I guess? It measures body fat in different areas of the horse, behind the withers, behind the shoulder, the neck crest of the horse. It measures fat on the tail head of the horse and how level the loin of the horse actually is. So this system assigns a number. It goes from 1 to 9 to all these different areas, 1 being the lowest and 9 being obviously the more fat. And the person just goes and assesses these different areas of the horse. It's pretty much impossible to assess the body condition scoring without actually touching the horse. So by looking at this picture, I would give this horse maybe a 3, maybe a 2, but I would actually have to go and touch this particular horse. So it's something that people need to be proficient. They need to know, they need to learn how to assess the body conditioning of their horse to be able to make adjustments to their feeding schedules as needed. One other thing that I would like to say is that you guys can see that I said, behind the shoulder blade, I said the withers, the tail head, the loin area, the neck of the horse, the rib area is actually very important also, but there is no place in the Hennicky scale to measure a big belly. A lot of people say my horse is so fat, they have such a big belly, but the truth is a big belly is not a sign of the horse being overweight. You can actually be extremely thin and emaciated and still hold a big belly. So this horse right here, this picture, in my opinion, is about a 3 or actually maybe even going down to a 2 in the body condition. As opposed to this lady here, who is extremely fat. You can see she has a very crusty neck. You can see that ribs have a long time disappeared from this horse, and she would be, very much close to a 9. She's probably a 9. I don't know her tail head, but one of the things that is important for you guys to know is that the crusty neck, this fat deposit on the neck is one of the last fats to be deposited on a horse. and also the most difficult one to disappear after the horse has gone through a diet. So this is one of the things that you can see a horse that is looking kind of okay throughout the body, but continues to hold that crusty neck. So that crusty neck is actually related to a metabolic disorder or horses that are more prone to foundering, especially in fresh grass of the spring. This, if you see a horse that has a crusty neck, that's never a good sign for that particular horse. So it's something for you guys to also go and learn how to discern that. This particular horse here is what I would think would be ideal. He, in my opinion, is a 5, a body condition scoring of 5. This horse actually belonged to me, and although he is gorgeous and beautiful, he was a rearer, and he had to find his place to live away from my place because he tried to kill me repeatedly. But anyway, that does not take away the fact that he was actually very beautiful and looked very healthy and had a body condition scoring of 5. A body condition scoring of 5 will enable the horse to actually do the majority of the disciplines that a horse needs to have. Maybe a horse that is actively racing will have a body condition maybe below a 5, maybe a 4.5. So you may see a little bit of a ribs on this horse, and definitely an endurance horse would probably be a body condition of 4 as well. So it will be a more of a leaner kind of a horse. But a body condition scoring of 5 or 6 is ideal for pretty much any kind of competition that a horse is going to go through. I am going to skip to the next slide and then come back to this one, just because we just dealt with a semi-harsh winter, and a lot of horses tend to lose weight during the winter, and then we find ourselves in February, March, and April trying to put weight on this horse. So via the body condition scoring, you can actually know if your horse is in need to gain or to lose weight. So I'm just going to go through quickly some of the things that we can do to make this horse gain weight. So one of the things that you have to understand for an animal or for a person, for anybody to gain weight, we need to increase the intake of calories and decrease the expenditure of the calories. So this is one of the things, this is the main focus that we need to get to actually gain weight. So if your horse, I don't know what you're doing to the horse, but if your horse needs to gain weight, some of the things that you need to do is maybe feed extra hay. A lot of the people tell me, oh, I'm feeding 2 flakes in the morning, 2 flakes in the evening. And number one, I don't know how much those 2 flakes actually weigh, but it's important that people understand that a horse needs to eat about 1.5 to 2 to 2.5% of their body weight in feed. So a horse that weighs 1,000 pounds needs to eat more or less 20 pounds, even 25 pounds of feed, that being hay and concentrate, to be able to maintain their body weight. Now, horses that need to lose weight obviously are going to need to eat a little less. But extra hay, maybe you're not feeding enough hay, enough forage for this horse, or better quality hay. Maybe you are feeding a Timothy hay. Timothy hay is palatable, but it is not very nutritious. So one of the things that you could do is maybe change this hay to an alfalfa hay, or maybe change the hay to a hay that was harvested a little younger, so a better quality hay. Another thing that is excellent for horses to be in to gain weight is actually good pasture. A lot of the times pastures are overgrazed, and especially show horses or performance horses, they very seldom will go out in pastures and be there 24/7. So one of the good things about pastures that it's calorie dense, it's calorie rich. So if your horse needs to gain weight, this is another thing that you can do to help him out. You can add concentrate feed. So if you haven't been feeding concentrate yet, you can start adding that. If you are already feeding, maybe you're just feeding not sufficient amounts. so you can also increase the concentrate feeding. It's important also that horses don't eat more than 5 pounds or 0.5% of their body weight, or 5 pounds actually, of concentrate feed per meal. So if your horse is already eating 2 meals of 5 pounds each time, it's probably what you can do is break it down to 3 meals of 3 pounds each time, or 4 pounds a time. Maybe you can increase 2 pounds on the total of the daily intake of the horse, but just breaking down in 3 meals. Another thing that I'm a fan of is fat supplement. So you can just increase the fat intake of that particular horse. You can do it by feeding oil. Any vegetable oil will do. A lot of studies have been done, and corn oil is not really the best oil to feed horses for other reasons, because of the omega-3 and omega-6 imbalance that is in corn oil, but that's a different subject. And omega-6 can be pro-inflammatory. So say this horse is an older horse, has some inflammation going on, so this may be not the oil that you want. But the market today has so many different types of fat supplements. So you just need to find an equine nutritionist or find your vet and see which one would be the best. But any kind of vegetable oil, canola oil would be fine. Some horses are picky and do not want to eat the oily feed, but there's also powders like rice bran that come in powders that you can actually do that way. Another thing that is important for you guys to understand is the pecking order. If your horse is fighting for food, your horse is going to be hard to gain weight. So it's something that if you have a group setting that you're going to feed everybody in a group and your horse is the lowest of the pecking order, you may need to remove your horse and feed him separately, especially his concentrate, or if you have, say, outside a round bale, but we're talking here on the second point, better quality hay, but you're going to need to feed this horse now some alfalfa hay, you may need to bring this horse in, feed his alfalfa hay so he is able to gain some weight. The other thing is to decrease the energy expenditure. So if this horse stays outside and he's fighting off the flies all the time by stomping his feet, and he is just out in the hot sun, this is a lot, and he's not going to be spending time eating. This is a lot of energy that this horse is spending. Exercise. A lot of people want to continue to exercise. So say ride this horse 6 times a week, and this horse is sweaty every single time. So, and then you're trying to also put weight on this horse. And that's something that you're going to probably have to decrease the amount of exercise so this horse can gain weight. So here, increase intake and decrease the expenditure. And obviously stress. An animal that's stressed because he's not happy with the pasture that he's in, or too much exercise going on, this animal will have a hard time gaining weight. And then to lose weight, you can just think the opposite of what we just said. So we're going to decrease the intake of calories and increase the expenditure. So we're going to adjust the feeding. Maybe if you are feeding a concentrate to this horse, maybe all you need is a balancer feed. A balancer feed is a feed that within 1 to 2 pounds of that particular concentrate is going to have all the vitamins and minerals that the horse needs for his daily intake. So that is all that he needs. It's going to be super balanced, but it is low in calories. So that's something that you may want to think about. The other thing is, if this horse is eating free choice hay, you may want to cut down and feed him less hay, maybe a lower quality hay. Say this horse is eating that alfalfa hay, you do not want that. A lower quality hay does not mean that it's a hay that is moldy. It may just mean that it's a hay that was harvested a little older as far as the plant age goes. You can also try to do dry lot or muzzle for that particular horse. This horse that I have here on the picture on the top left, that's Maddie. Maddie lives dieting, because she is a quarter horse. She's super efficient. She gains weight by breathing. So Maddie spends about 10 months of the year in a muzzle, and sometimes the muzzle is going to rub her face because of the halter, and then I put her in a dry lot. So there is discussion both ways, you know, because by putting a muzzle on a horse, he can continue to walk about in his pasture, and can continue to socialize, and can continue to show the things that horses need to do, such as trotting, cantering, galloping, and being free to buck and everything, because he's in a bigger pasture. Plus, he has company. In a dry lot, yes, you're going to control more the amount of food that this horse is eating, but he's not going to be able to express the normal things that horses need to express every day. So this is something that I am also divided on which one. So my horse, Maddie, spends time both in a muzzle and also both in a dry lot. Burn more calories, okay? So burn more calories. If you put, so say if I put Maddie just in a dry lot and I do feed her, you know, the correct amount of hay, it's a lower quality hay, but she's standing there all day long, as opposed to being in a pasture that she has maybe, you know, 2- and 3-year-olds with her that make her move. You know, these horses may be a pest in her opinion, but in my opinion, they are actually my workers, because they are making her move. So this is something that you guys can do as well. Exercise, you can start, you know, if you cannot ride this horse every day, maybe you can lunge this horse just to increase the calories, the amount of calories that this horse is going to be utilizing. The other thing that is important also for you guys to know is there any medical condition that is impeding this horse from losing weight? So some horses are metabolic, they are insulin resistant, and if that's the case, they are going to need to be medically treated. And if that's the case, your veterinarian will need to very much be involved in helping this horse lose weight as well. And here I just have the URL for 2 fact sheets. One is to lose weight, the other is to gain weight, so you guys can check it out. And this is just a picture, you know, there's nothing better than horses eating fresh pasture, and they look great. Pasture has a lot of oils and omega-3s that actually helps horses. Their coat looks beautiful and everything. So I just am a big fan of horses being out at pasture as much as possible. Another thing that we are going to touch base is, what about worms, okay? What I would suggest is not the indiscriminate deworming protocols of deworming your horse every 2 months or every month or every 3 months, but is to develop a deworming strategy with your veterinarian that is going to include fecal egg count, maybe, you know, several times a year, maybe twice a year, but deworming needs to happen at least twice a year depending on the horse. The reason why I say that is because a lot of the fecal egg counts that are performed, they only count strongyle eggs, okay? And the strongyle, and maybe they can also see roundworms, so ascarids. So, but they don't see tapeworm eggs. A lot of the fecal egg count. Some of them will. But what I'm trying to say is that okay, not a question for me. So what I was going to say is that if you count all the strongyle eggs and the horse comes, say, 500 or above, say it's 1,000 eggs per gram of feces, you are going to want to deworm this horse with something that will kill strongyle, so like any ivermectin-based dewormer. Now, one of the things that I say you need to deworm this horse at least twice a year is because you're not counting the tapeworm eggs. And then twice a year, if this horse, say, is very low in the strongyle egg count, say they're always like 0 or 70, so you're like, oh, I don't need to deworm this horse because it's very low. what I would like for you guys to think about is the tapeworm eggs that is not being counted. So at least twice a year, and I do say December after the first frost to kill also the bots, and July, if that's going to be the case. So December and July, you deworm these horses with something that will also take care of the tapeworms. So for example, ivermectin plus praziquantel. So this is something for you all to understand. Now, horses may not look very well if they have a heavy worm burden, but some horses, you know, a lot of the times they just live their lives and you don't even know. A lot of the high shedders look just as good as any other horse. The other thing that is important, and this, I do all these things, and I, you know, recommend all these things to be done between February and April and May at the latest, okay, to start the year correct for these horses. So all these things that I'm talking about. How about teeth? So poor dentition will prevent a horse from chewing well and break down the feed, so hay and concentrate, in a way that he's going to be able to absorb all the nutrients. Also, poor dentition can be the cause of a horse having, say, colic by impaction. Okay, so it is important that horses, especially after they're 5 years old, they need to be checked at least, or they need to be checked once a year for their teeth. If they're below 5, that means that they're still changing to permanent teeth. They should be checked twice a year by either a veterinarian or a dentist, depending on what your state allows. So in Kentucky, it is illegal to practice dentistry if you're not a veterinarian. So I always suggest that here in Kentucky that you see a vet. But in other states, dentists are allowed to practice as well. So whatever you feel comfortable with and whatever your horse feels comfortable with as well. It is important to remember that any dietary changes will take time to show an improvement. So you don't start adding, you know, all that alfalfa, all that hay, all that feed and expect that this horse will improve in the next week or so. And also you need to do whatever change you're going to do needs to be gradual. So first you change hay, and then after several weeks that the horse is now eating the better hay plus eating more quantity of hay, now you're going to add the feed and so on and so forth. So it needs to be gradual, and it takes time for any changes to show. So so now the horse has a good body condition scoring of 5 or a 6. So what do we do next? So we get the horse ready. The horse has gained or lost weight accordingly. You have done the teeth of this horse. You have developed a deworming protocol for this particular horse. And this horse right here is one of my horses as well. This is a friend of mine that rides her. So the health status of this horse. So, you know, I generally separate my vaccinations between spring and fall for these horses. And the AAP, the American Association of Equine Practitioners, they separated their vaccinations between the core vaccines, in which every horse should receive, regardless of gender, of use, it doesn't matter. Every horse should receive these vaccines because they're deadly to the horse. They can also happen and be passed on to people, especially rabies, okay? And then they have another list of risk-based vaccines that I'm going to go and talk to you a little later. But the core vaccines is going to comprise tetanus, West Nile, Eastern equine encephalitis, Western equine encephalitis, and rabies, okay? Of these particular diseases right here, these 5 diseases right here, West Nile, Triple E, and WEE are all transmitted by mosquito bites. So they're all transmitted by mosquito bites, and we all know that mosquitoes come out starting in the spring. So spring, summer, and fall is the time that mosquitoes come out and start biting everyone. So it's important that your horses be protected before the mosquito season, okay? So West Nile is more prevalent in September and October, but Triple E and WEE, we haven't seen in a long time, but Triple E, especially Florida, Georgia, Carolinas, they're very prevalent diseases, okay? So it is important that this horse, so if I were to separate diseases by fall and spring, I would do the mosquito-borne diseases in the fall, in the spring, and then the other one, say tetanus and rabies, I would do in the fall. Say if you're only going to vaccinate your horses against these ones. But the title of this seminar today is to prepare a horse for the show season. So I'm thinking you all are wanting to take your horse to shows. So that's where the risk-based vaccines come in hand. Because when, as you can see, influenza and herpes virus are not part of the core vaccine, but these are diseases and also strangles that can be easily passed in the show setting because they are respiratory diseases. And respiratory diseases, when the commingling of horses from different backgrounds, so in shows, in racetracks, in horse camps, when these horses come together and start touching nose, that's when these diseases can actually spread very, very quickly. So this is wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Kelly. So this is the other vaccines that I would highly suggest. So these vaccines here on the core side, these are annual vaccines, okay? Except for Triple E in Florida, they probably vaccinate every 6 months to every 4 months just because they're so prevalent, okay? The risk-based influenza and herpes virus, for example, it can be annual if your horse is not going to be very exposed, or herpes virus you can also do every 6 months or every 4 months as well if your horse is going to be going to shows every single weekend. And then the other vaccines you can talk to your veterinarian about because it's going to depend on the location that this horse lives. If this horse, for example, is a stallion, he's going to be vaccinated for EVA maybe. Botulism, if you live in Kentucky, we highly recommend that your horse be vaccinated for that just because your horse, because Kentucky is very endemic for botulism. And rotavirus, only brood mares get vaccinated for that one. So important spring or pre-show vaccinations is exactly what I talked about. So the mosquito-borne diseases, okay, and then the respiratory diseases. Now, the mosquito-borne diseases, other things for you to think about also is fly spray. Is anything that you can detract the mosquitoes from biting your horse. So fly spray, mosquito control, so no stagnant water in places. You can also try fly sheets. I generally put a fly sheet on my horse and then spray the fly spray on top of that. Now fly sprays, I don't know if you all know, but their chemicals break down when you have in contact with the sun. So one of the ones that are harder to break down is permethrin, and I'm going to write this down here. Permethrin is the one that is the hardest one to break down. So there is another one called pyrethrin, and pyrethrin breaks down within an hour of being exposed to the sun, whereas permethrin takes a little longer to break down. So when buying fly spray, just make sure that you buy one that is going to last a little longer if your horse is going to be out in the sun. Other pre-show season health considerations. The Coggins is a test that is going to see if your horse has equine infectious anemia. This is required by law if your horse is going to be traveling on the roads. So this is required by law. This is a test that needs to be done every year if your horse is going to be traveling to shows, is going to go to races or auctions, etc. So this is a test that needs to be done to accompany the traveling horse. The health certificate, this is called the Certificate of Veterinary Inspection. That is one that the veterinary comes over, takes the temperature of the horse, see if the horse is healthy, and then signs a paper saying that the horse does not come from a facility that had an outbreak of equine herpes virus, which is rhinopneumonitis, and then that accompanies the horse as well. So the health certificate, the expiration varies from state to state and the venues within a state. So for example, Kentucky, if you have a health certificate to go like trail riding or to go to the shows, it lasts a year. If you come from out of state to show in Kentucky, it lasts 30 days. And if you are going to show at the Kentucky Horse Park and you are from Kentucky, it lasts 6 months. So this is something that you need to be aware of, so you can have your paperwork correct. Other things that I think is highly important is to practice biosecurity measures at home and during outings. What do I mean at home and during outings? At home, no sharing of buckets and grooming supplies. There is no need to share. Each horse needs to have their own bucket and their own grooming supplies, because especially in the spring when there is a lot of rain, there's going to be other things that we're going to see in the next slide, such as rain rot, that is infectious also and also contagious, and the horse can pass from one horse to another by grooming supplies. Sharing of buckets, especially in shows. We don't share things in shows from a horse that we don't even know it's from a different barn, because we don't know. You're just asking for trouble, especially with the respiratory diseases. And then I say isolation and quarantine of newcomers, because again, you don't know where this horse came from. So when the horse, even if it's your own horse, if you go to a show, say you spend from Friday to Sunday at a show, there is no telling the different viruses and bacteria that this horse was exposed to. As this horse returns home, it's important that you keep this horse away from the other horses for several days, to see if this horse is going to come down. In Michigan, they had, a month ago, equine herpes virus type 1, the neurologic type of disease that there is no vaccine for, and we had several horses that got contaminated with that particular disease. And then now in Maryland, there is a new case of that particular disease as well. So say you went to that show, you don't want to bring that disease to your farm and then spread it to other horses that didn't even go to the show. One other thing that is important is that a lot of, if the people are heavy in showing and performance horses, they may not take the winter off. Some people just give the winter off to the horses regardless. But one of the things, not because you are not riding in the winter, that your horse does not need to see the farrier regularly. So this is a foot from a friend of mine's horse that just got a little neglected over the winter, and you can see it's overgrown, and this is not a healthy way to start your spring and you start riding this horse, because to adjust this foot you can actually take everything out in the first trimming, because you can cause lamenesses in this horse. So it's something that even if you're not going to ride this horse in the winter, it's important that he continues to see the farrier to maintain being sound. Then I put here, to shoe or not to shoe? That is the question. I think I would like to ask our participants here if you all have horses and if you keep them shod or if you keep them barefoot, because everybody, this is such a polarized subject that people that are barefoot believers, they demonize the people that shoe their horses, and the people that shoe their horses demonize the barefoot people. And the truth is, each horse, it depends on the horse. Some horses can go barefoot year-round. Some horses can go, need shoes on all fours, and some horses can go with only shoes in the front. So it's only going to depend on the type. Let me see here the answer. So barefoot, my horse has 2 front shoes, bare in the back. Mine has shoes all around, barefoot, same as Anne-Marie. So the thing is, there is no right. It depends on the horse. It depends on the genetic of the horse, number 1. Genetics of that particular horse. Number 2, how healthy the horse is. The good feeding protocol that you have for that particular horse. So all those are going to play a role into the fact that if the horse can go barefoot or not. The truth is, I would like my 2 horses to go barefoot. My horses can't, because they just get lame and I think it is for my particular horse, it would be bad for them to go lame if I know that putting a shoe on will prevent them from being lame. So Maddie, obviously being a quarter horse, is a navicular horse, so she gets shod year round. I used to remove her shoes for the winter, just to give, her feet a break, and then it would take 3 to 4 months to get her sound again in the spring after I put shoes back on her. So that being said, I just said, you know what, I'm going to bite the bullet. I'm going to pay whatever I pay to shoe her, and she's going to go. I hate navicular. Navicular is a bad disease. I started actually giving my horse Adequan, and it has changed her life. So she's on Adequan now every 4 weeks, and she is on therapeutic shoeing, and she has not missed a beat. But anyway, that goes for Amber. So that being said, so it's just going to depend. Do I want my horse to be lame for 4 months, just for the sake of, oh, this horse needs to be barefoot, or do I want the horse to be sound for any Adequan? Yes. Adequan. There we go. Other spring considerations that is important for horse owners to understand is the new grass is coming on with a vengeance, okay? And horses that are prone to foundering, okay, this new grass is full of sugars, so you're going to need to be careful for laminitis, okay? New grass full of sugars, laminitis is a thing. The other thing is that lots of sugars cause the bacteria in the GI tract to go a little crazy, and this horse may become a little colicky with a type of colic that is just gas. So it's called tympanic colic. And this colic, it's something that may be resolved by itself, but it's just something that you may want to be aware. We already talked about mosquito-borne diseases. Other things that are important is wild animals are out, and they are out and about, and they are going crazy because they want to mate. So, for example, possum, they are the definitive host for EPM, which is a neurologic disease in horses. And if they defecate in your horse's feed or hay, and your horse eats the feces of a possum, they can actually get EPM. So it's something for you all to be more aware. Also, skunks are out, and skunks, especially in Kentucky, skunks is the #1 animal to transmit rabies. Also, raccoons, they are also out, and they can transmit rabies as well. And raccoons also can transmit distemper to dogs. So it's something that you do not want in your property. One of the things also is that possum is a scavenger, so he will come wherever there is food spilled, or they come to eat dead carcasses of animals. So if you see a dead carcass of a bird, of a mouse, of a raccoon, you need to remove and dispose of that carcass so as to not attract the possums to your farm. Skin conditions. Okay, because of the amount of humidity and rain, so rain rot is something that you may need to deal with, and there are different types of medications that you can treat these horses. It's a very painful condition in these horses. Urticaria, which is hives, so it's an allergic reaction on the skin. So the horse may eat a different type of plant that is just growing wild in your pasture, or even by allergy by mosquito bites. So it depends. So the mosquito bites or any fly bites can come and bite these horses, and this horse break down with hives all over their skin. One other thing that I think is important is that because his horses may be staying in mud for long periods of time, and that mud just attaches to their legs, and then it dries, and it dries off that skin, and the skin can actually start to crack, like minuscule microscopic cracks that can be an open door for staphylococcus infection. So the horse can develop what we call cellulitis. Okay, so it's something that what I like to do, I mean, I don't wash my horse's legs every day, but if they have been out and it's super muddy and their legs are just dried with mud, I like to wash their legs with a shampoo, so like a betadine kind of shampoo, so I can not only just wash the mud off, but also kill a little bit of the bacteria in their skin. So this is not antibiotic, like antibacterial shampoo. These are shampoos with disinfectants, okay? So we're not developing resistance in this bacteria. So this is important for you guys to understand. Other spring considerations is allergies. The pollen is out, everything is out, a lot of humidity, so these horses can come up with cough, runny nose, runny eyes, and they can lead to bronchitis, pneumonia, eye infections, etc. So you start walking these horses and trotting this horse, and they start to cough, and it's just something that you may need to pay attention to. Okay, so we talked about those things. The horse has a good weight. The horse is healthy. You vaccinated this horse. You have a deworming protocol for this horse. This horse has a beautiful skin and is ready to show. And now what are we going to do? This is my son right here on my horse, and that's why I'm at the university tonight where I'm talking right now, because at home I would be interrupted all the time with him, because he would want to also be talking to you all about horse health. So what are we going to do? So you can't just hop on this horse. This horse has had 3 to 4 months of rest, allegedly. Okay, so this horse was not 4 months without any sort of exercise. Hopefully we're going to talk about that. But some things to consider. So what kind of winter did your horse have? Was he in the stall all the time? So different show horses stay in the stall all the time. Is he in the stall half of the time and then he goes to a round bale the other half of the time? So that's not a lot of exercise. Is he out all the time? Is he out with friends that make him move? Have you ridden this horse a few times throughout the winter? Have you lunged this horse? Okay, so these are things that you want to be considering also. Is this horse young or is this horse aged? The reason why I ask this is because younger horses, you may need to go more slowly with them when conditioning them, just because you're not only conditioning their muscles and organs, but you're also teaching them skills. So you may need to go slowly with them, because by virtue that this horse can actually not even turn. So that's why you're going to go a little bit more slowly, so you don't crash against a jump or something. So it is important for you all to know that the skills, a horse that is a trained horse, is an aged horse, 12 years old, the skills, maybe he's a little stiff, but he didn't forget the skills, so he is going to be ready to go and exercise and be ready to go. However, he may have lost condition. So although the muscles come back kind of quickly after this horse has been properly conditioned, it is important that the first several weeks you take a little bit more slowly with this horse to bring him back up to a good athleticism. What I was going to say about conditioning of muscles is that it takes, depending on the type of muscle, it takes only a few days to improve these muscle fibers, and it may take 3 to 4 to 5 weeks, 6 weeks for this muscle to actually decondition, for this muscle to, as the horse becomes sedentary. So it takes a while before this horse gets deconditioned, but it's important that you guys either keep them exercised throughout the winter by lunging or even riding every once in a while, or take it super slow in the beginning of the spring. What is conditioning going to accomplish? So we're wanting to improve the cardiovascular system, the respiratory system of this horse, the muscular and skeletal systems, and also the tendons and ligaments. The cardiovascular system is actually the first one to improve. Okay, this horse starts improving their aerobic capacity, so improving their stamina is the fastest one to actually improve and get adapted. Muscular system is actually not that slow, depending on the type of exercise that you're going to be doing with this horse. Tendons and ligaments are a little bit more slowly than muscles. So it's something that the horse may look buff, the horse looks beautiful, the horse is strong, but maybe his tendons or ligaments are not as adapted as you would think, and that's when you think the horse is ready to, I don't know, maybe turn a barrel or jump 5 foot tall, and this horse may not actually be ready. He may be ready to jump once a week, but not a strenuous exercise. So it's something for you all to understand. So the goals of conditioning is to increase stamina. So that's the aerobic capacity of the horse, to increase the strength and to increase the speed of this horse. So exercise to increase the aerobic capacity of the horse is the long and slow. So that's going for walks and slow trots for long periods of time, like 60 to 120 minutes, several times a week, 3 to 5 times a week, and that is going to increase the aerobic capacity of the horse, increase the stamina of this horse. And then the high intensity exercises for short duration of time, they are going to increase the strength, okay? The muscles are going to become hypertrophied, and also increase the speed, to increase the anaerobic capacity of the horse. The speed, you may want to say, no, but I don't want speed because I am doing jumping. But the speed is the one, actually, the strength and speed is actually what makes a horse go from cantering around the arena to actually go over the jump, okay? The horse needs to collect himself under his body and actually go over a jump, and that's the type of muscle fiber that he's going to use. It's going to be a thicker type of muscle fiber, and also one that fires quickly, okay? That's to the speed, because otherwise if it doesn't fire quickly, this horse is going to crash over the jump. So this is what you want to do. Now, you, after this horse has been trained, you can also intercalate, do long and slow 3 days a week, and high intensity for short duration the other 2 days of the week, or do interval training. Interval training is big now also in humans, in that you may do long and slow, or slow for 30 minutes and do a short duration, 12 seconds, 13 or 15 seconds or a minute of high intensity. So go over a few jumps and as this horse is warmed up. The other thing too of conditioning is to teach skills for this horse. So we want to increase their conditioning and also learn particular skills, okay? One of the things that is important also for you all to know is the footing. So generally we need to train this horse in the particular footing that he is going to compete in. Horses that all they do is ride in arenas, okay, where it's flat and beautiful and manicured, when you take them out to a pasture, they may be a horse that is going to trip. So I actually like, and I'm a fan of warming up the horse take the horse out for a hack. Okay, just hack the horse over grass, and that is what I'm talking about here, proprioception. So this horse knows exactly where his feet are. So this horse can actually go and not trip. And this is a horse that when you take him to the arena, it's a piece of cake for him, because the arena surface is so much better and so much easier for him. Not better, but easier for him. And that's one of the advantages of being able to hack the horse. The other thing is the arena surfaces, okay? A lot of the synthetic surfaces can be very hard on the horse's muscles, okay? But they, because the foot will not slide over on the arena when the foot lands on the ground, that can actually be, the muscles of this horse would take a little bit of the brunt, and this horses may become really, really sore. We see this on horses that train on sand, and then they come, say, to the horse park and compete all weekend on polytrack, and then on Monday, these horses sometimes cannot even walk. They're so sore because their bodies were not used to that particular surface, okay? So this, I'm just showing you a picture. That's my horse again. She had a bout of colic, so she wasn't being able to be ridden yet, but she needed to be walked. And here is, you can see here where she had her IVs hooked up to her. And this I'm just like, to keep her conditioned and keep her after like how many days that she was off, I started bringing her back up, and this is the Pessoa system that I really, really like, because it helps the horse engage the hind legs and bring it under themselves, okay? So just walk, and this is her a week or so ago, and she, we have progressed from just little walks to being able to do the short intervals of high intensity, which to her is jumping. Okay. What else can we talk about shows? So we need to plan in advance. What shows are we going to attend? Local shows are great to desensitize the horse, okay? I like to say that practice makes perfect, but sometimes not with a horse, because we're dealing with horses and they can become unpredictable. But at least mastery at home is a minimum necessity before going out to a show. And it's important also to practice and master the level that you're at before moving up to the next level. So my horse, for example, likes to jump, but that doesn't mean that she's ready to jump 5 foot tall, okay, without being injured. So this is something that is important. We need to progress slowly so her whole body can actually be able to adapt. Now, being on the road, the high stress from training, little turnout, traveling and hauling, showing in a different environment, this is so important for you all, can and will lead to ulcers. There are studies out there that show that just hauling the horse for as little as 6 hours will, the horse arrives at the other place with gastric ulcers. So it's just something to for you all to think about. I got this photo. This is the EGUS, the equine gastric ulcer, and they grade the ulcers from 0 to 4, and these are squamous ulcers on the aglandular part of the stomach. So you can see one is just like a reddening, okay, and then the two, you already have little ulcers and bigger ulcers to grade 4. And this is the pyloric, so the glandular part of the stomach with ulcers, okay? And these particular ulcers are a little harder to treat. And for some reason, warm bloods are more prone to this particular ulcer right here, whereas thoroughbreds are more prone to this particular ulcer right here, although they can also have this one. This one is harder to treat. How do we treat ulcers? So the only FDA approved treatment for ulcers today is the GastroGuard, omeprazole, and that's a 4 grams per day treatment. And then it depends on the scoring of the ulcer, but it can be up to 28 days. And if it's pyloric ulcer, you may need to go over that. And then prevention, just changing management to increase the turnout of these horses. One of the things that is so cool, you can feed hay, a flake of hay to the horse prior to exercise, so the gastric juices are not just lushing around the stomach of this horse on an empty stomach, because that will cause ulcers. It's important that these horses have forage at all times. So if it's a horse that you are only going to feed 2 flakes of hay in the morning or 2 in the evening because this horse is on a diet, for example, it's important that you put slow feeding hay nets for this horse so they have hay in front of them all the time. Because, for example, my Maddie, if you just put 2 flakes for her, she will eat that in 30 minutes. And then what does she do for the next 12 hours when she is not going to receive more hay? Her stomach will just continue to produce the gastric juices. Then there is one other drug called UlcerGuard that it's 1 gram a day during the times of stress. So if you're going to haul the horse, or if you're going to go to show or increase training for this horse, you can do that as a preventative. And then the nail locks and tums, etc., at targeted times, so prior to exercise. So you can either do the hay prior to exercise, or you can do some sort of gastric buffer prior to exercise, for the same reason that the gastric juices are not just lushing all around inside the stomach of this horse. So this is what I had to talk to you all about today on how to keep your horses healthy throughout the show seasons. And I think I'm going to now give it back to, this is my horse. Look at her face of happiness. To Gwen. Gwen, did you want to say something else? If you guys have any questions?
Sure. Let's give everyone just a chance here. If you do have any questions, go ahead and type them in the chat, and We'll see if we have any before wrapping up this evening. All right, we will I'll wrap up with a couple of things here, but once again, if people do have questions, just go ahead and type it in the chat. Love to answer any questions that you have. Well, we definitely like to thank Dr. Camargo and for her presentation this evening, and we definitely like to thank all of you for your participation as well. One thing we'd like to mention is that we would love to get your feedback. So you will be receiving an email with a link to a survey, or you can go to the link here on the screen, or I'll also put it here in the chat. And it's just a very short survey asking you, giving us a little bit of feedback on the webinar and helping us out, maybe giving us some suggestions for future topics and things like that. And let's go ahead and pause just a second here, and I will let, we got a question here about how much hay do you think horses can eat before exercise?
Christine, I think that 1 to 2 flakes, so if you say you bring them in from the paddock or this horse has been inside the stall, I would toss a flake or 2 and wait 30 minutes. And once the 30 minutes is over, I feel that they have eaten enough hay to buffer their stomach and to also absorb those gastric juices to be preventative from those slushing around. So 1 to 2 flakes, or if you think about 30 minutes, it's perfect for this horse. As you're like getting your tack ready and everything, you just let this horse munch on some hay. It is not going to hurt your horse to have hay in his stomach prior to exercise. This is a misconception when people think it's going to hurt them. No problem.
Okay, great. Thanks, Christine, for your question. And once again, if anyone else has a question, just go ahead and put it in the chat. We do want to make sure to let you know we do have one more webcast coming up before we take a break for the rest of the summer months from our monthly webinars. But our next one coming up on May 19th is from Dr. Betsy Green, and she'll be talking about some tips for staying safe while you're out trail riding your horse out on the trails or maybe on the road. So look forward to her webcast here in May. And finally, we'd also love it if you guys became a fan of My Horse University and E Extension Horse Quest on Facebook. You can see us on Facebook for up-to-date information about events and promotions and great information from experts like Dr. Camargo. And please finally remember that this webcast was recorded, and we will be putting it up on our website here tomorrow. And if you have any questions or suggestions, please email us at info@myhorseuniversity.com. And with that, I will pause here for a little bit in case we have any more questions. But other than that, I'd like to thank you, and I hope everyone has a great evening.
I think Samantha is writing something. How many horses do I have? I personally have 2 horses, a quarter horse and a thoroughbred, a reiner and a jumper, and I have a boarding facility and I house 17 horses. I have a lot of horses under my care. And I also teach at the university, and I also have a 2-year-old son. So my life is super busy. I know, wow is right. Thanks everyone for participating in our monthly webcast. It was a pleasure presenting to you. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to send me an email later on. My email is fernanda.camargo@uky.edu, and I would not mind whatsoever to answer any questions you may have.
All right. Well, I think we're maybe at the end here, so I'm going to go ahead and close the meeting. But thanks again to everybody.
Thank you. Bye, Gwen.
Bye-bye.